All right, lads. My approach to nutrition, because I know it can be such an emotive issue. Somebody gets a diagnosis, and straight away we're on Google and we're looking up what caused cancer, how to prevent cancer, what we should and shouldn't be eating. And that in itself can cause a massive amount of stress when you're going through your treatment. The last thing you need when you're going through your treatment, or even after your treatment when it's finished, which can be a really emotive time as well, can be really stressful. And not just for the individual going through the treatment, but also for their loved ones as well. And I often have to counsel families about, not being so hard on yourself when somebody can't eat, or because food is not just about the science of it, it's about love and it's about our social engagement. Food is in everything really, and we have to eat, Nourishment is life-giving. So all foods can be life-giving. So when I hear, superfoods, wrecks my head. And when I hear really bad foods, that wrecks my head as well. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to balance. And balance is the key, really. And if we can get the balance right in our diet, in whatever part of life we're in, whether we're kids or adults, or we're getting older, or we're going through a traumatic period in our lives like cancer diagnosis, if we can get the balance right, we're doing the best we can for ourselves in that situation. And it might need tweaking at times. And I know from my own patients, when they're going through their treatment, it very often means we do a lot of tweaking. And I can cover that with somebody individually if anybody's got individual issues going through treatment at the moment, or their loved ones are going through treatment, they're struggling with everything. But we won't possibly cover that today. I'm just going to give you an overview of what balance means more than anything else. And always remember, if we're eating and we're eating with our families and friends, then there's a certain amount of stress relief there as well. So whatever you're eating, enjoy it. That's the most important part. All right. If eating becomes a chore, then we're not getting that sense of wellness from it. Having said that, there's loads of science behind a lot of foods as well. So I'll try and cover a little bit about that today. There was a release of a document only 2 days ago from the World Cancer Research Fund, and I have a link to it at the end of my talk. So it really is the one-stop shop when you're looking at evidence-based advice on nutrition, lifestyle, exercise, for cancer prevention and for cancer survivorship as well. And the new document has been 10 years in the making. It's a worldwide intervention initiative, and it's gathered all the evidence that there possibly is out there, and it's come up with some suggestions. You won't be surprised to hear the suggestions of the stuff that we kind of know already, and I'll go through their 10 commandments at the end of it. But with all these things, they talk about weight, body fatness, exercise, sedentary lifestyle, all those things. Rather than trying to look at the ideal all the time, what we're always encouraging is that we're starting to move towards these goals. Some of these goals can be very unattainable for a lot of us. I can vouch for myself, and I'm a dietitian and a sports scientist, so it's not about being this perfect being all the time. It's about whatever we can do at the moment in our lives that can make us feel more vital and give us vitality. And it could be something as simple as introducing one more piece of fruit a day. And that in itself, you're a healthier person for that. All right? And as I said, if the actual advice becomes a burden, then we're not going to get any goodness out of it. So always be kind to yourself as well. And we Irish, we're great at putting ourselves down. And we judge ourselves quicker than we would our best friends or our loved ones. So we have to show the same sort of kindness that we show to other people as well, to ourselves. And that's very important as well going forward. All right, so that basically sums up that life isn't just about science. There's the physical aspect of life, there's a psychological aspect of life, there's our work environment, there's our relationships, spiritual side, and that kind of comes into food as well. As I said, if we're sitting down with our families and we're eating, there's a sense of wellness that we're going to get out of that no pill can give us. So I always use a model of food to try and describe balance to us. But this pyramid can be anything really. It can be a picture of a plate, picture of foods in general. The balance really is when we're going through the different types of food groups and what they do for us. And a lot of misinformation's out there about a lot of foods as well. I always try to bring it back to basics. If the food is whole and is not touched by man per se, i.e. it's not processed, then it's going to be good for us. And the other thing we have to watch out then is the amounts or the balance from the amounts that we eat of those things as well. So this food pyramid has changed. So this is the Irish version of the food pyramid. It's changed in the last 2 years. Does anybody notice what difference is there? Down the bottom? Yeah. So there's more plant foods, an emphasis on plant foods these days than there has been in the past. It was always there for us, but we really know now that plant foods can be really good for us in many, many ways. Variety is the spice of life when it comes to plant foods. And we know now that as well that our gut flora or bacteria in our gut has a massive impact on our health. Not just in our physical health, but also in our mental health as well. There's guys down in UCC and they're world leaders in producing probiotics and looking at gut bacteria. And we know now that poor gut bacteria can lead to weight gain, but it also can lead to mood alteration as well. So these guys in our gut have a massive impact on our overall sense of wellness. And there was a guy down there, Professor Shanahan, he's gas man. He reckoned we're just containers for the more important species, which is the gut bacteria. So they're different genetically than we are. So we need to look after them. It's like, you have to farm your gut flora. You make sure they're nice and healthy. And we do that. A lot of it is through food. Stress reduction can have a big impact on your gut flora. And exercise. And we'll always talk about exercise as medicine or activity as medicine. Very important. When we look at people who have poor gut flora, it's the people who have the chronic diseases and stuff like that. Now, obviously, a lot of things can influence, like medicines and things like that as well. So we need to just be careful. And if we can eat and do the things that we have control over to encourage this gut flora to blossom, well, then it can only be good for us. The probiotics, these are the functional foods that you buy in the shops. The jury can still be out in those things. What we should try and do is encourage our own natural flora to grow. So we're always, I think we generally, and we're sold these pups as well sometimes, we're always told that a tablet is better than the ordinary stuff that we do, and it's not always the case. And if we holistically get all those balance right, like the food and the exercise and the stress reduction, the sleep, it can have a massive impact on your gut flora. The fruit and veg, okay, so we always talk about variety being the spice of life there. The colours in the fruit and veg contain a lot of what we call plant chemicals, phytochemicals. And these guys can interact really well to help dampen down inflammation in our bodies and promote good gut flora. So plenty of colours, don't be afraid of it. Skins and all, we say in Cork for the spuds, the actual skins contain a load of the goodness. All right, so if we can at all, we need to preserve the whole fruit or vegetable rather than take everything away and whittle it down. Now, I know going through treatment, we always talk about food safety because that's very important. So just washing everything well, really. Make sure everything's nice and clean, that you're not picking up any unsavoury bacteria from your foods. Fresh or frozen, there's always a big argument over that. Locally fresh, in-season stuff might be the best for us because our genetic makeup would be very familiar with those types of foods. So it could be the cabbages and the Brussels sprouts or whatever we had in the old days in the winter, and then maybe more of the summer fruits and stuff in the summer. The frozen stuff can be really, really fresh because what they do is they harvest and they freeze on site. A lot of the better frozen stuff anyway. So by the time it gets to us, when we cook it up, it can be in a quite fresh state because it's kind of put into a coma. The fresh stuff, and we'll all have experience about this, I suppose, when you buy in the supermarkets and they look brilliant under the radiant light and there's always good smells, and they're almost shiny as well, aren't they? A lot of the fruits and vegetables can be sprayed. And then you get it home and your carrot has gone limp in a day or 2 days or something like that. So what they're doing there is they're keeping it at a chilled area, so it's kind of suspended. But obviously, the minute something is harvested, it's kind of dead, really. So we need to eat that as quick as possible, Now, growing your own stuff is probably the best way of all, but we don't all do that. So anything that's local, from the local farmer markets and stuff like that, brilliant. And in season as well. We talk about amounts then. How much of it do we need to protect themselves against diseases and things like that. They reckon about 5 to 7 portions. So it used to be 5 portions, but now they're going up to 7 portions a day. It's quite a lot. I think when we look at the research that comes out of Ireland about the food pyramid and how we, as a population, how we meet these requirements, the food pyramid is turned upside down. So our sweets and the top bits there can be 5 to 7 portions, and the bottom bit can be 1 to 2 portions. I think as growing up in Cork City, I think it was tomato ketchup would have been considered a vegetable at the time, and maybe fruit gums as well. That was about it. I seem to remember everything was white when I was growing up for some reason. So colours, very important to have on the plate, all right? And again, we're not saying, oh my God, I'm not doing 7 a day, this is terrible. Always think positively. If you've gone from 1 portion to 2 portions a day, then bank that. That's a massive move for you and for that person in the right direction. And we can build on those little victories. I think with dieting and nutrition, it can be an all or nothing affair. And we'll always be quite motivated at the start to change everything. But there's no other part of your life where you can just change everything and sustain that change. So it's all about making small changes for yourself in a positive direction and patting yourself on the back when you make those changes. And that will lead to more sustained change in the long run. Right, so fruit and veg, very important, can't get enough of it. Plant foods, massive in all chronic diseases actually. And for vitality as well, for your skin and your hair, everything, all those chemicals that we get from those foods are massively good for us. Up to our second bit, which is, I suppose we call it carbohydrate-rich foods. I hate breaking down foods into fats and carbs, and was it no carbs before marbs, is it? Is that what they say? Don't think about foods in those situations. Think about foods that are in front of you. So we're talking about potatoes, and we're talking about bread, and we're talking about rice and pastas and things. All these foods break down to give us energy, vital for life. All right. The problem is a lot of these foods can be processed, and they can kind of break down and not interact well with our gut. That can lead to problems. So the more whole the food, again, the better. So when I talk about whole foods, I'm talking about whole grain rice, that has the whole rice rather than the polished stuff. I'm talking about a potato with the skins on if we can eat them. And the breads as well. The heavier the breads, like the old days when we used to have the soda bread, home baked, ready, it was like a brick sometimes. You could drop it, you'd hear a thud. There's good stuff in that, all right? A lot of the breads these days, unfortunately, can be quite processed, even the whole grain breads. You know how light, like some of the manufacturers are, and you're kind of going, okay, it's brown, but is it? Is it really whole grain? And we know now that some of those really processed foods can have a breakdown a lot quicker in our bodies. And we talk about this thing called a GI index, which is a glycemic index, and it just shows you how your body reacts to certain foods, especially from this area. And some brown breads aren't equal to other brown breads. So the heavier and the more coarse the whole grain in your bread, the better it'll be for you. Rice and pastas, we always talk about portions as well. I love this one. Okay, so if we were having 2 or 3 spuds, right, for your dinner, the equivalent to that in rice and pasta, we'll take rice now because it could be easier to kind of visualize. So 2 spuds is the equivalent to 6 dessert spoons of rice. All right? So that's nothing on the plate. Like if you're like me, we used to do the Quran tool and put a hole in the middle of it, throw everything into it. So that'd be equivalent to maybe 10 to 12 spuds. And we use those foods for the athletes because it's such a good energy source. But for the normal Joe soap, we probably don't need that much of in a sitting. And this is, I suppose, where carbohydrate-rich foods get a bad reputation, is because we probably choose the wrong types and we probably eat too many of them as well. But if we choose the right types and keep the portions in the right proportion, they're actually very, very beneficial for our health. And we know now that the fibre, we always knew fibre was good for the bowel, didn't we? But we know now that certain fibres can interact well with this gut flora as well. Because genetically, that's the kind of food we used to eat with our ancestors used to eat. So if we can keep the food whole, we know it's going to be much more beneficial for our body. 3 to 5 servings in the day, which is still quite a lot. So you could probably have 2 servings for breakfast, 2 for lunch, 2 for dinner. It's a nice spread. Rather than being hungry, which is a lot of mistake a lot of us make, we don't eat enough during the day and everything happens at night in behind closed doors. What we should do is just try and fill our plates with other foods. And I'll show you a little plate later of how to balance it up. So volume of food shouldn't be an issue. We can pile it on if we're hungry. It's just getting the balance right is the kiddie there, really. If we go up to our milk, yogurt and cheese, so this really is our dairy products, but it's also alternatives these days, and we're looking at calcium, vitamin D, things like that are really good for our bone structure. That's why it's in our kind of balanced diet, really. I'm like a lot of the dairy foods actually can interact well with our gut flora as well, especially if we're Northern Europeans. If our ancestry came from Ireland, we tend to have a much better relationship gut flora wise than say somebody who came from maybe Asia or Africa, because those foods weren't huge amount in their diet, so their gut flora hadn't developed over the years or over the millennium to deal with these things. And I know cheese, for instance, now is always given out about, even dietitians give out about the stuff. So don't quote me on this. You can turn off the camera now. What we're talking about here is a little bit in the right amounts can actually have a beneficial effect on our gut flora, because our gut flora knows about dairy products. So we think the dairy from fat mightn't be the same as fat from, say, processed baked products or something like that. And there has been some research to suggest it, because we always talk about cholesterol and we talk about animal fat pushing cholesterol up. The link isn't as strong as it used to be. But now there's a bit of evidence to suggest that things like dairy, the fat in dairy, might actually help cholesterol come down, which is quite controversial. So again, don't quote me on it, but it's something that we need to be aware of. If the food is whole and it's natural in the right amounts, mightn't be that bad for us. And it kind of leads you on to kind of wondering about all these low fat products and 0% fat and things like that. Maybe a natural yogurt with berries put into it, i.e. no added sugars, might be better for you than a 0%, nothing in it, completely processed food that the gut flora mightn't recognise at all. So just bear that in mind. Milk is a bit controversial, or dairy is controversial anyway, because we had a lot of links with especially the hormonal cancers like ovarian and breast and prostate with a lot of dairy products or dairy type foods. A lot of information you'll see from nutrition is observational. So they look at populations and they look at foods and they say, oh, people who develop breast cancer, they eat a lot of dairy and stuff like that. But there's no causal link. There's nothing to say that if you remove dairy from that population, that breast cancer would be reduced dramatically. So we have to be careful about how we interpret the data as well. The latest data would suggest that in moderation, whether you're doing dairy or whether you're doing a dairy equivalent, like maybe soya products with calcium, vitamin D added, once we keep within the amounts recommended, there doesn't seem to be a negative impact on your overall health. And for me, when I'm working with my patients in hospital, and a lot of times trying to build people up rather than talk about healthy eating per se, it's about getting the balance right for those patients. Things like milk and stuff like that can be a really useful product or food to use to help meet their requirements. So it's all about meeting your requirements for the time that you're in whatever part of the journey you're on at the time. Yogurts, alright, they're quite controversial as well, aren't they? Probiotic. So we mentioned about the good gut flora. If you're going through treatment, we're very cautious as health professionals to recommend anything that has live bacteria in it. The reason being is because our immune systems can be quite low, and our gut is a big part of our immune system, and that can get a little bit leaky. And if we put something into our gut that's not normally there, it can translocate and go into our bloodstreams and cause problems. Now, it's probably quite a small risk, but it's something that we can't recommend. And you'd see all the normal books like the Irish Diet and Cancer books and stuff like that, they'll always won't recommend probiotics while you're going through treatment. Certainly before or after, absolutely fine. I've got a couple of great websites as well for those kind of evidence-based information and that at the very end as well. So feel free to clock onto it. There is an app you can download called About Herbs. That's very, very good from an evidence-based point of view, and about supplements and herbs and things like that as well. How it may or may not interact with your treatments. So yeah, that's the dairy. We're looking at 3 portions a day. All right, so glass of milk's a portion, an ounce of cheese, matchbox size. My joke is not the family matchbox size, just the matchbox size. All right? Don't be misquoting me when you go back out in the big bad world there now. I get the blame for everything, of course. Like, what was it? The vitamin D was another one. One lady said, the dietitian said I need 4 holidays a year to boost up my vitamin D. So while the sun is good, I am not going to be responsible for all these things. So yeah, the dairy, it's good to dairy or dairy equivalent's good to have in the balance right there as well. The sugar content in yogurts and things like that can be an issue. I wouldn't worry about the fat in a yogurt. I'd worry more about the sugar. Anything over 10 to 12 grams of sugar is you're probably entering stuff that's been added in. You'll always get sugar in yogurt because you'll always get it from the milk, and you'll always get it from the fruit mixed in. But it's that added stuff that we have to keep an eye out for. If you're up to the 30 or 40 grams, you know something's gone into it that shouldn't be there. And unfortunately, processed foods, there's cheap commodities out there. You can get fat from anything, you can get salt from anything, and you can get sugar from anything. And you can bulk up a natural product and make it quite unnatural when you put excess of these things into us. So something like a breast of chicken and a processed chicken Kiev, they're completely 2 different products really when you're talking about foods. So back to the fork and the table and the land and the trees and stuff. If we can get our foods from those areas, whatever you're eating is probably going to be better for you in the long run. So they also have, that's the dairy. So up to our meats, poultry, fish, eggs, also the vegetarian sources of protein-rich foods, which is our beans and nuts as well. All right, so there's a lot of emphasis these days on pulses. And the more I read about them, the better they are. So pulses, and layman's terms, would be your beans. What about your mushy peas? You like mushy peas? Yeah, see Corkman here again now, like mushy peas came with the chips and the fish. But the marrow fat pea is really good for us. So what we're looking at is trying to get these pulses in their natural form again, if possible. You know, the tin stuff is okay and it's great to have if we can't do anything else, but sometimes there's salt and the sugar added to those guys again. The beans are great, but they've got the sauce around it, which has excess salt and stuff like that, and sugar. So if you can get the pulse itself, so you're talking about your marrow fat pea, your kidney bean, your chickpea, black-eyed peas, there's loads of them these days. They can really be very beneficial for our health as well. All right, plant foods, so we have our fruit and vegetables, but these guys just do a little bit different. They're brilliant for lowering cholesterol. They've got protein in it, which is very good for our lean body mass. And our lean body mass is very important to maintain through our treatment. So we know now that more than just body weight, if we lose a lot of muscle through treatment, the treatment itself can become more toxic to our body. They're doing a lot of good research in UCC at the moment, and we're thinking that maybe your cancer treatment, the dosing, should be based more on the quality of your lean body mass rather than your body surface area, which is what they do now. So we're always trying to keep the body as strong as possible through treatment. And we do that through eating protein-rich foods at each meal, and also through exercise as well, or activity, whenever we can. So I think the traditional way of, rest up there, you must be tired, I'd always encourage my guys to just get out, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes. It can help overcome fatigue to get your body started in the morning. Now, you know, you'll be your own expert, so you know when you're absolutely whacked out and you just need to rest. But the more we move, the stronger the body will be going through treatment. And we know the exercise can be great for the mind as well, So anytime you can do a bit of activity for yourself, absolutely brilliant. The protein then comes in to build the muscle, but we have a big protein pool in our body and it's used for everything. And the reason why it goes down so quickly is because the body needs loads of protein for healing and things like that as well. So getting protein in at each meal is actually quite a good way of the body accepting it in. If we tried to have it all in one meal, which is kind of traditionally what we did, we might be just overburdening that meal and not getting the right amounts in at each meal before that. Your protein-rich foods would be all your kind of fleshy foods like your fish, your chickens, your lean meat, your beans, your pulses, eggs, nuts and seeds, things like that. So have plenty of them at each meal, and you won't go far wrong. There's only a certain amount the body can take in anyway, so you don't need to up and up. That's probably a good thing we always talk about, especially with supplementation. I think we always try to, the man, or we'll say the human race, we're always trying to mimic what nature does, and we usually fail dramatically at it, like, you know. So supplementation, while it's necessary, if we're really low on something, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And this World Cancer Research Fund have come out and said no, that actually taking too many supplements can have a negative effect in your health rather than just have no effect at all. So just be very careful of what's advertised out there. We all know that antioxidants are great for dampening down inflammation and stuff like that, but our foods are a much better way of getting that into our bodies, and the body being able to utilise it in a much more synergetic way than loading us up with high dose supplementation. There's been a couple of kind of very big research studies that showed, I think one in particular, they showed folic acid, high dose folic acid supplementation to dampen down, it was for heart prevention, actually heart disease prevention, and they looked at 10,000 people, 5,000 on the supplementation, which was supposed to be really good for your heart, and 5,000 not, and they had to stop it halfway through because the people who are on the supplementation developed more cancers than the control group. And we know that folic acid, by its nature, is a cell promoter. So that's why it's so good for spina bifida. It helps close that spine, and it's why pregnant women should always be on folic acid. But if you think a high dose supplement without any check in your body, so you're putting in massive doses without the kind of not coming from food, who have a load of different type of chemicals as well, then that will just encourage those cells to grow and grow and grow. And if there's a dodgy cell out there, you're actually promoting that cell to grow. So that was just a prime example of what we thought would be good for somebody wasn't good for them in the end. So always try to get your nutrients from food alone if you can, and the body will just interact much better with that. Up to our fats, oils and spreads. So again, I suppose when we're looking at cancer prevention, we're looking at really keeping our body weight in check as well. Fat by nature has a lot more calories in it than proteins and carbs, but not all calories are the same. So the fat we get from nuts and whole foods again might have a real good beneficial effect on our overall health as well. And we're not convinced that all those calories get into your body as well. So the fat from, say, a Tantastic, a jelly, and the fat from a nut, if they were the same calories, the fat from the jelly will get 100% into your body and be used as energy or stored as fat. The fat from the nut, about 30% of that might not get in. So actually the calorie difference can be quite dramatic there. So just, again, when you're eating whole foods and mixed dishes and stuff like that, don't worry too much about the calories. Your body nearly will look after itself in that respect once we get our portions right. Oils can be very beneficial for us. Plant oils, again, because anything that comes from the plant is very good for us. And that's the same with tea and coffee and things like that. If it's the natural source, so if it comes from the tea leaf or the coffee bean, and we have an infusion of it in our water, then that can be very beneficial for us as well. So a lot of my patients are always worried about drinking too much berries or limes, maybe, I don't know what are we on here? It's berries anyway in Cork, that's what I'm saying. And coffee as well, and actually coffee with ovarian cancer has shown a massive protective element in it. This is more recent studies that have shown that the coffee can have a really positive effect in preventing ovarian cancer going forward. So don't be afraid of the stuff if you're drinking it, that's what I'm saying. It's what we eat with it, I suppose, that can cause problems. Spreads, they can be quite controversial, can't they? Butter, spread, trans fatty acids. You know, all spreads like olive oil based spreads and stuff, you know, olive oil pours at room temperature. So the spread, they've done something to it, haven't they? And unfortunately in Ireland they've banned it from other countries, but I think the trans fatty acids are still allowed in the production of our foods here. You get it in a lot of processed baked products and also in our spreads. So look, whatever you're going to choose, I'm not an advocate of one or the other, because we think that saturated fat can cause inflammation in the body as well. It's all about moderation. If you're like my father and put a bit of bread with his butter, half the butter, and then just a small slice of bread, then you're probably overusing the product. Don't be afraid of using everything else. Like there's other things out there like mustards and fancy dance stuff here that are probably more natural sources. Peanut butter is quite good. If it's pure peanut, it can be quite good for you. So use other things. Experiment away with all these things. And then up to the top, I suppose we know all about this, don't we? The high sugar, high fats. These are the processed foods that have a load of calories, and they're kind of processed calories again. Do you remember what I said? Empty calories. So they've no nutrients in them. So you could eat something like an avocado, which is quite high in calories, but it's got all those brilliant nutrients in it that can help protect your body. Whereas something like a bag of Tantastics, I keep going back to the Tantastics because they're my particular thing. There's nothing else with them. You're just getting sugar really, like, aren't you? After that then we're looking at fluid. So everybody goes to me about water. Hydration is key. We tend to get dehydrated in Ireland quite a lot. A lot of people come into me and they say they've been sluggish for months on end, and it's really from a hydration level rather than anything else. So keep your hydration levels up. You don't have to go mad in it either. You can wash out too many salts and that can cause problems as well. But you normally a good indication if your urine is quite clear or light straw colour, you're well hydrated. Don't wait for thirst, because thirst means you've gone too far really, like. And what we all love to do is drink gallons then, and that can put the kidneys under pressure, and that'll get rid of a lot of fluid, but you're not getting it into the cells. So sipping away all day is probably a good way of doing that as well. And don't be afraid of other fluids like your teas and coffees and stuff like that as well. Absolutely no problem. Whatever helps us to drink more is going to be better for us. Alcohol, all right, so one man's small amount is another man's massive amount. There is the guidelines out there, the units, I think it's 18 for men now and 15 for women, and they've lessened it down. The cancer group tend to say, if at all, drink in moderation, because a lot of cancers have been linked to alcohol or to overuse of alcohol anyway. I'm the believer in, if whatever you're doing in life, some things might have really positive scientific value, and sometimes it might have negative, but if you get the balance right, if you have a load of good foods in your body to protect you against your little bit of alcohol, then you're in a much better place than if you didn't eat all those foods and that still had the same alcohol. So always think about what will work best for you in that scenario. I live in Cork City on a street called Barrack Street with about 15 pubs, so it's very hard for me to get home in one piece from the bonds. Alright, so that's like the food pyramid. Everybody kind of goes, yeah, I know about it, but if you're ever looking for balance, that's what you need. You need all those food groups, you need whole foods, and you need the amounts to be in the right amounts. And if you get anywhere near that, you're going to do yourself massive benefit throughout life. If you're going through treatment and you can't eat it all, then we manipulate that, but we try to still keep the balance. So for instance, if you can't eat loads of fruit and veg, you're having a vegetable soup or something like that, a good way of getting these things in. Protein, going through treatment is very important. I'll always push the protein on everybody. So we try to manipulate the diet to suit the situation that you might be in. Are we on time there? Are we on? Right. Moving down. Right, so we mentioned about protein. See this World Cancer Research Fund? I have the link afterwards. The science is on it. The new stuff is out. You can download the whole report if you want. Diet, lifestyle and physical activity and cancer prevention. But generally speaking, all the tools and the handouts and they've loads of different sort of recipes and stuff like that. It'll all link back into those guidelines. So if you just want the handy stuff, download whatever you want from that website. But you can see there the portion control. I'm like cereals and another one. The lads come into me and they say, "Oh, I just have one bowl of cornflakes," but the bowl's like a fish bowl. It takes in half the box. Do you know what I mean? So that's not a portion. That's a serving. We call that a serving. And it's the same with the wine, isn't it? You've all seen those glasses where you could keep fish in the wine glass, like. All right, and if it takes 3/4 of the bottle, that ain't one glass of wine. All right, just remember that. I'm not giving out. I'm just pointing it out. And really, it really is about just watching portions there, because we tend to do the serving and portion thing. We tend to get wrong. You shouldn't feel hungry ever when you have a meal. So you just have to manage that as best as possible as well. So you're filling up with the plant foods like the fruit and vegetables, and those pulses can be great fillers as well. Like if you've 6 tablespoons of marrow fat peas on your plate, you can reduce your spuds from 4 to 2, but you won't feel like you're missing out then. There's not an empty plate for you. Alright, so 2/3. Now this is a bit quite fancy then, but it could be the spuds there, it could be the vegetables there, and your fish or chicken there. So 2/3 of your plate should be the plant food. Again, if you're like me growing up, you'd have half the cow on the plate and maybe a sliver of carrots or something like that, but it definitely is pushing more plant foods on everybody. I always talk about, because food isn't just about we eat because we're hungry, food has a load of other implications in our lives. We eat for comfort, we eat for coping strategies, we eat for reward, massive in Ireland. Do you remember as kids you used to always be rewarded if you did something well with a nice ice lolly or something like that? So we have to remember there's a load of different drives behind why we eat. And sometimes what can happen is a lot of my patients beat themselves up. They get the cancer diagnosis, they're trying to change everything in one foul swoop. They have a lifetime of drives and belief systems that have grown around food, and trying to change that overnight is just impossible. So you have to be really kind to yourself and understand, become more aware of what makes us tick. And once we explore that a bit more, we can manage our foods and our intake much easier in that respect. And mindful eating is just another part of mindfulness. It's a bit about being aware and being on that moment when you're eating that food. And we've all done it. We eat on the go for running around. The best thing I always talk about is the soaps at night time, or maybe the football match. You have your big bowl of popcorn or whatever there, and you like that. No, your brain knows you're eating, but it's not getting the hit that it requires. So if you want food, if your food is there for your reward and you're watching something else, your brain's not really registering. And they've mapped this neurologically where the brain can light up, the part of the brain that takes in all your sight and your smell and your taste. All that stuff goes back to the one part of the brain. If you're watching Corrie or something like that, the brain isn't lighting up as much. So whenever you're eating and whatever you're eating, if you can pay attention to the food itself and really, I suppose that word, savor it, slow down, and let all the senses become upon it, then your brain will probably turn itself off a lot sooner. So if we're struggling with overeating and snacks and chocolates and things like that, and then of course the guilt comes afterwards, which makes us feel terrible altogether, so we're not even getting the benefit of the enjoyment of the chocolate or whatever, then having that mindfulness around that food can give you the power back and the control back. And I can go with anything, and I even teach this to some of my patients who struggle with smell and taste and stuff like that, and just being aware of what's triggering them, we can manage that much better. And the awareness is the big thing there, rather than mindlessly eating, which a lot of us probably do. Right, so we mentioned build-up diet, but I really don't want to spend too long on that, because when you're going through treatment, you should really have somebody looking after you in that respect. There's loads of things we can do to manipulate the diet to get you over the hump that you may be in. It could be something as simple as anorexia. The drive for food could be gone, or it could be taste change, smell changes. All the foods can be manipulated to get you through those points. The thing is to remember is, whether it's yourself or your loved ones going through treatment, if they're not eating, they can become malnourished quite quickly. So we need to make sure that we're on top of all these things sooner rather than later. Alright, so I spoke to you about the World Cancer Research Fund. So these guys brought this report out 2 days ago. Alright, so get on their website if you want to get more information about it, but I'll just take you through it there. Be a healthy weight, alright, we kind of all know that. So again, I'm not talking about your BMI 25 or whatever. I'm talking about if you have excess body fat, and for us men it's probably worse because we tend to have it around the abdominal area, and inside our bodies fat can accumulate in our organs. So our liver, our pancreas, kidneys, they can all accumulate fat, which makes those really, really important organs not work well. So if we can reduce that kind of fat in our diet or in our bodies work much better, and less inflammation is produced and stuff like that. So reducing down body fat, if we have too much of it, can be a really good thing to do. So rather than worrying about BMIs and stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff we'd be targeting. That we're trying to reduce the excess body fat and the fat that's in our organs more than anything else. Alright, so that's just the be physically active. Exercise is medicine. You can't do enough of it. It's not just the stuff, you go to the gym, you pump iron. Well, this is kind of what I do sometimes. You go to the gym, you pump iron, you go, brilliant, and then you're back onto the couch for half the day watching TV or whatever. So it's the movement, it's the activity that we do every day that has much more beneficial effect on our bodies than just the hour in the gym or whatever. Now, I'm not taking away that's good stuff. If you go for a brisk walk, that's brilliant, but it's what we're doing during the day. If we're on our feet most of the day, we're going to be in a much better position. And use exercise as an individual medicine or as an individual intervention rather than trying to link it to weight control and things like that, because it can be very disheartening. If you are exercising, you are a healthier person, full stop, regardless what weight or regardless of what you're eating. You can. If they showed the benefits from exercise as a tablet, we'd all be dying to buy the stuff over and over again. So don't be afraid of doing whatever you're doing now, doing a little bit more, and trying to build it up as much as possible. Right, so we mentioned about plant foods, whole grains, and not the processed whole grains, the proper whole grains. Vegetables, fruits, beans, all that kind of stuff. All right. We said limited consumption of processed foods. All the evidence is pointing to the same. More so now than ever before, the processed foods and the gut flora, much bigger connection. If the gut flora doesn't recognize anything, it's going to die off. If it's not fed with the right foods, it's going to die off. All right, so we have to nourish our gut. All right, so we mentioned the glycemic loads there. So it is an independent cause of ovarian CA. It can be. So when we say glycemic load, we talk about the excess amount of glucose or sugar externally that we take in and our bodies can't really deal with it. And processing by nature kind of multiplies something. So say something like if you ate an apple, all right, there's a certain amount of sugar in that apple. It's natural sugar. But we squeezed 28 apples into one glass and we drank that, your body really wouldn't be able to eat 28 apples at one sitting. So you're overloading your system and the system can't deal with it. And then over time, all this hits, make our organs produce more and more of these things that our body doesn't like. So we kind of go into a fight mode, really, and we're trying to defend ourselves against these excesses all the time. So everything in moderation, but definitely, and I'm not knocking the juices and stuff like that. I'm just saying, certainly when we look at processed foods like the high sugars, the jellies and things like that, they can have a massive impact going forward as well. Okay, so meats are a big thing as well these days, especially with colon cancer. Now they say about 500 grams of cooked meat is pretty okay. So if you're not a huge red meat eater, that's okay. It's about 20 ounces a week. But if you're kind of especially Cork heads, we have double the European average for colon cancer in Cork. And we are big red meat eaters, so we have to be very careful, especially the processed meats. So we talk about anything like your hams and your salamis and stuff like that, very much in moderation, and then reduce the red meats about 3 times a week, and you'll be absolutely fine. Sugar sweetened drinks, that's self-explanatory, I think. It's more for the kids there. We worry about kids. Limit the alcohol consumption. Alright, so look, do not use supplements for cancer prevention. It's very important because we can get sold puppies a lot out there, and there will be a bit of science behind everything. We do know antioxidants are very good for us, but the antioxidants we get from our food, we get more than just antioxidants. So it's the synergetic effect that we get from the good foods that have much more benefit for our health than trying to mimic it through a lab. Again, if we're deficient in anything, absolutely no problem bringing that back up. But we have to hit an optimum level. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Right, and look, the rest of it, it's just really follow the same recommendations after treatment. That is the increased risk, body fatness for ovarian cancer, glycemic load, and sedentary habits. So there's things there that we can manipulate to help us. The physical activity, and look, coffee's popping up there. So the evidence is quite strong for the coffee for ovarian cancer, so don't be afraid of this stuff. And that's just a summary of everything. All this will be available for you on the website, so you can download all this later. There's a lot of information there. The Centre for Mindful Eating is probably a different one that you wouldn't normally see. So it's American, but they'll definitely help you to kind of, when you're working on your behaviour around food, the mindful eating can really help in that respect. And it's all about non-judgmental, not judging yourself, and then not coming down hard on yourself as well. So there's a lot about self-compassion there as well, which is very important. And whether we realise it or not, we can be very hard on ourselves when we're trying to change a behaviour or a habit. Right, I might leave it at that. No worries.